Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Every Horror Film, where horror is forever. And today we are talking about Wes Craven's new Nightmare. That's right. We are continuing on with the A Nightmare on Elm Street series. We're almost at the finish line, but first we've got to experience something a little new. Jeff, what's going on?
Oh, same old, but a little bit different this time around. I thought we were at the finish line. I thought we were done, and not a movie too soon, man. Because that last one, it took the wind out of my sails, man. For real. I said, you know what? It's time to hang up the glove. I don't know, man, but I don't know if it's because of the flop or because of the hype or what, but New Line wasn't done. New Line wasn't done, but they realized they could not make another Freddy sequel because the biggest part of their advertisement for the last one was that Freddy's dead, rightfully so. So New Line had to go back to the drawing board in sorts, and back to the drawing board they went, huh?
Absolutely. This comes off of 10 years since the original A Nightmare on Elm Street. So they were looking for something else to do. They wanted to do something different and fun. And this movie kind of gives me Halloween H2O vibes, where it's like it's the anniversary. Let's try to do something different. It kind of feels like that to me. I mean, it was kind of made in near the same time. Um, couple of years off, but in that 90s type of feel. So this does feel like something different. And I've seen this movie twice before. It's been a couple years since I've watched it, and I was really excited to watch it again because I really had no idea what to expect. What about you?
I saw it once a couple years ago, but it wasn't within the context of the franchise. This is the first time that I've ever seen it in its rightful order of the franchise. I've never marathoned the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and then gone into New Nightmare. This is my second time watching it, and this time not as a one-off. And yeah, man, I was burnt out. My feelings on Freddy's Dead. I know your feelings on Freddy's Dead. Franchise fatigue. I think I've mentioned the last three reviews we've done. So, where are you at with the franchise fatigue? With the going into it, were you hopeful? Were you not hopeful? Were you just wanted to get it over with? Where were you?
I actually was hopeful because I've seen it before and I knew I was going to get something a bit different than what we've been getting. So I was interested to see how I felt all these years later since I've seen this movie. And for me, this is such a hard movie to review because up until this point, I don't think there had ever been a movie more meta than this movie. And maybe there has been, and maybe I haven't seen it. Maybe in the horror genre there is. Maybe it's a film that I'm not aware of. But for me, at least, I had never. This movie is like a movie inside a movie inside a movie. It is very meta, and if you have no idea what to expect walking into this, you might be caught off guard a little bit as to what I am watching. It's very different from any of the other sequels.
Yeah, and meta is a word that I don't think was really popularized at this time. I don't want to say Wes Craven invented it because a lot of indie directors, indie producers, indie writers had been doing meta movies up to that point. Nothing AAA status, nothing blockbuster status. This would be the biggest. I'm correct me if I'm wrong. I feel confident when I'm saying this would be the biggest meta movie we had to date. And when people think of the word meta, they think of nowadays they think of like Deadpool, but and breaking
Yeah.
the fourth wall. But back then you had Scream, Scream, Wes Craven's baby, Wes Craven's other baby. Scream had not yet been invented yet.
Correct.
Scream, of course, we know you, put horror movies under a microscope in such a good way. I cannot wait to review that here. But Wes Craven hadn't done Scream yet. Scream hadn't come out for another 2 years. Prior to this, he got his creative muscles flexing, and he got writing on this meta masterpiece, New Nightmare, in 1994, I think. So everything that Scream is and everything meta about Scream came from Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And I don't know how popular New Nightmare is. It's hard to get a read on that. But we without New Nightmare, we wouldn't have Scream, believe it or not.
Now, I wanted to stop you there, but I was going to let you finish. Did you say masterpiece?
The meta masterpiece is a term that I've heard with Scream, and I've heard it with New
Okay,
Nightmare.
I thought you meant just masterpiece in general.
Masterpiece for Wes Craven.
Okay, okay. I
Yes.
didn't. I thought we were talking like Exorcist level masterpiece.
Hey,
I was starting to get.
we ain't there.
I didn't know how this review was going to go.
I don't know if we'll ever get back to Exorcist levels, but no,
We will.
we will.
We will.
We'll get there. But here we are, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, man, the seventh installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I want to hear your thoughts first. Freddy fan, well established. You've said your pieces. You liked, you disliked. How was New Nightmare?
This movie is so 50-50 for me. It's really, I am right on that line between I think it's one side, hey, this is a really cool concept. They did something different. It's fun. I like it. I'm with it. The other half of me is like, while I respect some of the things that they did try, there are a couple elements in this movie that I don't really like all that much. Granted, I understand it's the early 90s here. Some things do seem really dated in terms of effects. I try not to hold that against movies because I just try to think of it from that time period, but there are some characters in here I don't care for that much. There are some things I wish that I like the concept. I wish they would have took it even further and did more things with it. So I am so 50-50, and I hope I make up my mind by the time I give this movie a rating. By the end of this review, that's where I'm at right now.
You know what? That's why we do these reviews, right? If you're on the fence, let's hear both sides of it. Let's hear the same side of it. Whatever, man. Let's talk about it. Let's chop it up.
Let's do
It's
it.
50-50. That's yeah, this movie got kind of a cult following. Like I said, I don't know where it lies with the Freddy fan base, so I'm sure there are people there with you. As far as I go, the second time watching it, I don't think I've used the word yet in any of our reviews. I probably have, but I don't think I have. I'm going to say that I haven't. When it comes to movie reviews, I want to use the S word. What is the S word, you may ask? It's not sucks. It's not shitty. Wes Craven's New Nightmare slaps. Wes Craven's New Nightmare slaps the donkey shit out of you. Wes Craven's New Nightmare is my favorite Freddy Krueger movie ever made. And I have waited since the beginning of this review saga to get here, man. New Nightmare is thank you. Thank you. And now that I've gotten here in the context of this franchise, and you heard how much we were trashing the last three movies, now that we've gotten here, hey, thank you. Okay, this S word, this movie slaps, dude. This movie slaps.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I did not see that coming from you. You did such a good job of holding that in. I knew if you watch our review series as we gone on, we got down to these last two movies, this and the remake, and you were like, one of these movies is the best. And I was like, okay, I'm really curious as to which. I thought I had an idea, but you really weren't leading me in that direction. And I was like, man,
I was trying to bury the lead a little bit, man. I wanted to get here.
You did. You get an A from me for that.
And I even foreshadowed this moment 4 reviews ago. In Nightmare on Elm Street 2, the review, when you said that Nightmare on Elm Street 2, the depiction of Freddy and his appearance was your favorite you'd ever seen, I said specifically, there's another depiction coming up that I want you to see, so hold your tongue until that moment. It's this one. It's New Nightmare. Tell me about your opinion on Freddy's appearance in New Nightmare and how it relates to the rest of the series.
I still think Freddy 2 is the best. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's not. I knew that wasn't going to change for me. But Freddy in this movie he's interesting because he's not really Freddy. He is a demon who is in Freddy's body, Demon Freddy, if you want to call him. They change up the look a lot. You know, the face, it's the same kind of template, but it's hard to explain. It's not so much like Burn Victim. It looks like his it's kind of been ripped off or kind of clawed. I don't know. It's tough to explain. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But I do like the face design. It's not my favorite, but I do like it. I think the claw is interesting. The glove, they don't go with the traditional
Woo,
glove
look at
here.
that piece.
I've got a lot more stuff over here, but
Oh,
I'm saving that for
babe.
a little bit later on. But they go with like it's kind of a weird contraption. It's like a special effects made contraption, which we'll get into in a second. It's cool. I do like the black jacket. I could do without the leather black pants. I understand it's the 90s, but um, the colors are pretty much the same. He's got a green fedora on this time. I won't say it's my favorite look, but it's not the worst. But I do think I'm cool with it because they tried something different. They're in a new, different type of film. They didn't take it to a level where it's like Michael Myers wearing being a hobo and having half a mask on.
Thank God.
They took the concept and they kind of flipped it on its head, and I respect them for that. I do like it. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fair. If they had tried to drop an appearance this revolutionized, like in the mainline Freddy movies out of nowhere, red flags flying, right? But in the context of this story and this character, it's not Freddy Krueger. It's what you said. It's a demon cosplaying as Freddy Krueger. This demon doesn't take a form. It takes the form of what our hero fears the most. It's doing its best impersonation of Freddy Krueger. And for that, hey, this is basically an original character to me. So I
Very
love it.
cool.
Absolutely love it. It is it's hard to say it's my favorite version of Freddy appearance wise because it is so different. I would say compared to the main line, I think Freddy versus Jason is probably my favorite appearance of Freddy physically. But this new Nightmare one, this demon version of it, dude, I want to see more of it. I want to see this one. They did what they did to Jason and Jason X is what they did here to Freddy. So yeah, man, I'm crazy about this appearance. I like it. I would have liked to have seen more of it. Golden rule number one, but we'll get there. I love it, man. It's bombastic. Like I said, S word, it slaps. New Nightmare slaps across the board, man. And I'm so excited to get to this one.
All right.
This is the Halloween 4 of Nightmare on Elm Streets for me. I'm just gonna let you know.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's get into this thing. So, the beginning of the film, we get this classic introduction, which is very reminiscent of the first film, where we get this. They're working on a glove, and I love it. I loved it in the first movie. We both said that. In this film, it's kind of done in a different direction, but I still like it. That working on the glove is just it's iconic. It just reminds me of Freddy just sitting in like his boiler room and just thinking all this messed up stuff, and he's just working on this. I love it. Great scene.
Good callback.
But except this time, it's fake because they are on a movie set, and we see that Heather Langenkamp is back, and she has a son in this movie named Dylan, and she has a husband named Chase, and Chase is a special effects artist, and he's the one that's kind of working on this glove for this movie, this new movie, I guess you want to call it. So we get kind of an introduction there, and this is where you kind of get hit with the, I hate using the word meta now, but you kind of get hit with this reality. This is something a bit different than your traditional. And I got to tell you, man, what did you think of Dylan, the kid actor in this movie, played by Miko Hughes? I know you hate kid actors, so
Hey.
I have to see what you think about him in this movie.
All right, I'm glad you asked. Let's get this out of the way. Child actors fucking suck, man. They're the worst. They're the worst, man. I'm sorry, dude. Hey, I wish you the best. I hope Hollywood treats you humanely, but no, man. This isn't. You're not gonna change my opinion on child actors here. If anything, I'm gonna dig my heels even harder in the ground on that. So no, man. My least favorite part of this movie is, as you probably guessed it, the child.
Interesting. And it's funny that I bring that up because there is a fan film that recently just came out called Dylan's New Nightmare. And it stars Miko Hughes playing an older version of himself, Dylan, and he's having nightmares and Freddy comes back. It's played by a YouTuber named Dave McCrae. He's He plays Freddy. He's like a voice actor. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen the trailer. It looks pretty cool. So they did make a fan film kind of continuing this story on. So if anyone wants to go check that out, they can. If they enjoy that, if they enjoy this movie. So but at the same time, we're having this, and then we get in this point where the special effects crew is working on the glove, and it kind of goes out of control and starts killing everybody on set almost. And Heather Langenkamp's freaking out. That's right. Notice how I haven't said Nancy yet. I'll get to
Not
that
yet.
later.
You
Not
will.
yet. Heather Langenkamp in this movie, she's freaking out, but she's having a dream. She wakes up, and really, they're in the middle of an earthquake because they live in California. I think some part of California, LA, I'm assuming. And I got to tell you, man, I don't live in California, but damn, I hope they don't have that many earthquakes as much as they have in this film, because it feels like every 5 minutes there's an earthquake. And I'm like, good God.
Yeah, I know a couple people who live in California or have lived in California. Earthquakes are common there. They're usually not to the extent that this movie puts on. That's intentional, obviously. A lot of them you don't even notice, according to them. So, but yeah, shout out. Hey, if you're watching this from California, tell us about those earthquakes, man. Is it like New Nightmare? Because I bet you it isn't, but tell me.
Exactly. So we get this earthquake, and they wake up, and her husband Chase, he cuts his fingers, very similar to the way he cut his fingers in the nightmare that Heather just had. And she starts to really get this thought process. She's been having dreams about Freddy again. And that's kind of an interesting concept to think about. It's like, if I've always wondered this. Let's say if you're an actor or an actress in a horror franchise, or it could be any movie, but specifically horror. Let's say how often do you think Jamie Lee Curtis has ever had nightmares about Michael? Like,
Oh, I bet.
that,
I bet.
like that's kind of an interesting concept that I like about this movie. Is like, in real life, if you are working on that, how many people have dreamed about Ghostface or Freddy, Michael, Jason? I mean, that's kind of a cool concept to think about.
Yeah, it is a cool concept, and it plays well into the meta theme of this movie. Yeah, man, and who better to have nightmares about? You know what I mean? I mean, who better?
Who better than old Fred? So that happens, and she's starting to think about all this stuff. But also, at points throughout this film, Heather has a stalker who she's been getting phone calls, and she finally admits it. When she acts weird, her husband's like, hey, is somebody been calling you again? And she's been getting these phone calls, and she thinks they're from Freddy. And which, in the reality of this movie, it would be quite funny if your significant other told you, hey, a scary movie villain keeps calling my phone. You're like, what are you talking about? No.
I'd say, and you know what? Without even dropping any names, without even any history, I'd say it's Freddy. It's Freddy Krueger.
It's Freddy. So I are I don't know if they fully ever explained this. Maybe they left it open to interpretation. Do you think it was a real stalker, or is it confirmed that it was the demon just calling on the phone trying to play tricks on her?
So my understanding is that after Nightmare on Elm Street took off, Heather Langenkamp in real life actually had a stalker like that, and who was actually calling her like that. So that, and she probably told Wes that, and she took that they took that from real life inspiration to kind of to add to the meta layer. Take a shot every time we say meta in this review, by the way. Add to the meta-ness of this.
Hold on.
There you go. Dude, I'll be out. But added to it, the stalker, it's kind of open to interpretation, but it's also heavily implied it's the demon, because the calls went away, and then like I think it was once the last movie came out and Freddy was dead on screen, the calls started up again, or no, it was when Wes started working on the New Nightmare script in the movie that the demon started calling again. So yeah, it's pretty implied that it's the demon, but it's taken from a real life story of a stalker that Langenkamp had.
I did not know that. Interesting. So yeah, that's a good concept to throw in there. And in the early points throughout this movie, and I'll kind of jump back to the plot here in a minute, but her son Dylan, he's acting very strange. He's having these, like, I'm not gonna call them seizures, but it's weird. He's like just randomly up at night screaming, walking around, and just like having like panic attacks, freakouts, and he thinks that something's after him. And although I was not the biggest fan of Miko Hughes, the child actor in this movie, he did do an okay job of getting my attention at some of these points. But yeah, he keeps having these weird freakouts, and um, he has this T-Rex that stays at the end of his bed to try to like keep the monster at bay, which is very childlike. I do like that part actually, because children do things like that. But yeah, and he's having these weird freakouts, and Heather Langenkamp's trying to figure out what the hell is going on with my son. I don't get it.
Yeah, yeah, he's having these freakouts. I mean, we know that the demon's back, but the half the movie spent unraveling the confirmation that the demon is back. And it's funny you say that about the child. It's a very childlike thing to do because who has nightmares more than children? Who has bad dreams more than children? So Nightmare on Elm Street, in and of itself, is very rooted in the child's psyche and what children are afraid of. That's my child screaming out there right now. It's very,
Exactly.
it's very rooted in nightmares, bad dreams, kids. Even though the main characters are teenagers and at this point adults, who has nightmares but children, and seeing it through the eyes of a child, like I said, that's some scary shit for a kid to see. So I like the Rex aspect. I especially like when Rex comes out with 4 slash marks in him. Very cool, kind of creepy, honestly. I would say just as creepy as her pulling the hat out of the dream in the first movie. I like that. I like that real world interaction. It adds some validity. Another real world interaction that we didn't mention was when the earthquake hits. You see these 4 slash marks in the wall. We think it's the earthquake. She thinks it's the earthquake, but we all know who did that. That was a warning. So yeah, I
Right.
like it. I love the real world interactions with this. That's part of what made it so cool. And hey, bravo, Wes.
Absolutely. Very cool. Very nice foreshadowing. So later on in the movie, after that, Heather shows up at this talk show. They're kind of asking her about her career and I'm on Elm Street. Tell us about the movies. Do you let your kid watch your movies? And there's a lot of commentary in this movie. I guess this is I guess this is still a topic of conversation for the media, maybe not as prevalent as it used to be, of young children watching violent forms of media, video games. Is it bad for them? There's a lot of commentary in this on that movie, I feel like, or in this movie, I feel like. So that's an interesting conversation. But she goes to this talk show and this guy's asking her about the movies. Do you watch it? Do you let your kid watch your movies? Are you going to do any sequels? What do you think about Freddy? Blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, Robert Englund kind of comes out of nowhere dressed up as Freddy. And the more I've listened and kind of thought about the scene, I think it's great because Freddie comes out and all the people in the crowd are dressed up as like Freddie, like his fans, and he's acting all goofy. He's like, hey, hey, and it's funny because the last time we saw Freddie was Freddie's dead, and he was a complete joke. And
Yeah.
it's funny because here we are 10 years later after the original film where he was a diabolical villain. Now he's just like a cartoon character, and it's kind of funny to see them kind of play on that bit.
Yeah, they didn't ignore the sequels. They didn't retcon the sequels. They acknowledged it, but this is very much Heather Langenkamp's story, and so the focus was really put on the ones that she was in, which is, let's face it, number one and a little bit of number three. So yeah, they didn't. They addressed the elephant in the room, which is that the sequels are kind of corny. They definitely did that, and so they made Freddy this almost like a birthday party clown. You know what I mean? So I was cool with that. Hey, Robert Englund's having a blast, and inside the movie, Robert Englund's having a blast. So so yeah, I was okay with that, and I'm glad they didn't pretend that it didn't exist. I'm glad it's not like, oh, in this universe, only number one ever happened. I'm glad they didn't do that, man. Take it for what it is. Be real with what it is. You earn way more points that way.
Absolutely. And that and honestly, that brings me to one of my I'm not going to say gripes because it's not really a gripe. It's just something I would have liked to see more without ruining the ending of this film midway through this review. Robert Englund plays himself in this movie, such as other characters do.
Mhm.
And he's in the film, and when he's on screen, I think he's just a good actor in general, even without the Freddy makeup. I just like seeing him on screen and listen to him talk. he does have more scenes later in the movie, but I wish he would have had a Freddy versus Freddy moment. I wish there would have been more of him involved in the movie as himself. And I think that would have maybe taken this movie up another notch for me because he's in it, but he kind of just is a side character pushed away. Granted, he is playing Freddy the demon, but still, his actual character of Robert Englund is not really shown that much, maybe a couple scenes later in the movie, and then he just kind of disappears. I wish he would have been there more to take on his own version of Freddy, or to be there. They all could have took on this demon version of Freddy. I think that would have really sent this over the top for me. And I'm kind of mad that I didn't get that in a way.
Like a Robert Englund versus the Demon.
Yes.
That would have been cool. That would have been cool. Yes, I agree with you there wholeheartedly. I think that would have been very meta. We'll touch on it a little bit here, but yeah, Robert Englund kind of disappears halfway through. It's kind of a loose end. It's kind of a loose end when we'll get to his scene, but where Robert Englund as the character goes in this movie is kind of left open to interpretation, but we will get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he takes off the makeup. He goes backstage. He hangs out with Heather. You know, they're walking to the car or whatever. Robert Englund is Robert Englund. He's not Freddy Krueger anymore. By the way, I haven't mentioned this in 6 reviews. My grandfather was in high school with Robert Englund. They were in the same class.
Wow.
Up in Massachusetts. He told me about that. He said Robert Englund was a super nice guy. And I wish I asked him more about it. But yeah, Robert Englund plays this very warm, very inviting character, like this friendly figure, non-threatening. Pretty much how I imagine Robert Englund to be as a real person. So someone who you can talk to. That's a nice counterbalance to the character we're used to seeing him as. It's a nice counterbalance to the demon too. I think that adds a nice yin and yang. Like, oh, here's what you envision Freddy Krueger as is this demon, and then no, here's Robert Englund. Separate them. Look at him. He's a real person, you know. So there's a nice softness about Robert Englund here, and yeah, I would have liked to have seen him in the end, maybe in the climax, but I don't know. I don't know why he kind of vanished halfway through. I don't. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll talk about it with his scene a little bit later on. So at this point, Heather makes her appearance and she's like, "Oh, Fred, you know, she's not really that into it. She's like, I'm a mom, I got a family." Very classic actress stuff. They kind of blow up in their teenage early 20s. They do some stuff and then they kind of like, I don't want to be involved with horror. They kind of move on and they want to do other things. So on the way there, she gets a call. It's people at New Line Cinema, who obviously the house that Freddy built, and they're like, "Hey, Robert Shea, the owner of New Line, wants to see you. Come on by." They pick her up in a limo. They take her there. And Robert Shea, I think he's got a cameo in pretty much every Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I think he put that I think he put that in the contract, maybe except for the first one. But he put that in his contract. He's like, "Hey, if I'm financing this shit, I want to be in the movie." Okay.
He's definitely a number 2. I'll tell you that.
He is. He definitely is a number 2. And he shows up and he's like, "Look, there's a new script that Wes Craven's working on for a new movie." And he's been having these nightmares. And she's like, "Well, what kind of nightmares?" Because she's been having nightmares too. And he's kind of hesitant to talk about it a little bit, but this is where we start to kind of get some of the plot in a clear view. And she's really like, "I don't know if I want to do that. I'm kind of done with horror movies. I'm having a family." And that's when we get the mic drop that her husband, the special effects artist, is already working on this movie, A Glove for the Movie. And she's like, "Oh, hell no."
Yeah. She learned to trust her dreams because her dreams are coming to fruition in the real world. Lo and behold, it's because Wes started projecting this creature onto the page and making it a very real thing. So yeah, that's why she's so insistent about finding out about the script. That's why she's been getting these phone calls. You know, it's there. Her dreams are coming true, just like in the first movie. So yeah, good call there. Good. Hey, if I took a shot every time I said meta in this review, I'd be dead.
All
So
right.
very meta, very good use of the term meta in this. So yeah, man. So let's talk about Wes Craven's place in all this. Obviously, the director, you know, but Wes Craven is the character. the story only exists because Wes Craven. Give me a second to figure out how to word this. Though the story, this movie that we're watching, only exists because Wes Craven, as the character, is writing it as we speak. That's the whole reason these events exist. So it basically seems like Wes Craven, the character in the movie, has this all omnipotent power to channel this demon into the dreams of not only the characters on the page, but the actors in real life. Do you think that concept, when Wes, before New Nightmare started rolling, the film that we saw, before it started rolling, do you think Wes was kind of, hey, Wes Craven, much love, no disrespect here, obviously. Do you think Wes Craven was sniffing his own farts with his ability to channel demons through his writing? Do you think that was a little full of himself there, like outside of the movie?
I maybe. I don't think it was like I'm the greatest director of all time. What I write down and says is gonna make the best. I think maybe because it's well known that he wasn't really the biggest fan of a lot of the sequels. And after the first, he didn't want a sequel. And I think after the first one happened and it kind of got away from him and everybody else, I think maybe he kind of wanted to be like, hey, like this is I came up with this, like,
This is my creation.
this is my creation, maybe could have did it a different way, but I don't think it's like, super on the nose, like I'm the guy that did this. I'm putting this out there. But I do get your point as to like, hey, maybe he was taking it a little too serious. Maybe he was, projecting just a bit. But hey, I can see that a little bit. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I read it in like this hot take about the movie that they were saying that Wes Craven was kind of just like, it was very pretentious of him to to act like he's this super writer, and this whole thing happens only because Wes Craven wants it to happen, or he wills it into existence, and the whole thing is like Heather Langenkamp being like, oh, Wes is having nightmares again. It's like, oh, Wes, you're so special because you have nightmares. That was the gist of that hot take that I was reading, and I was like, huh, I think if it was anyone other than Wes, I would immediately take your side on this, but I don't know. I think Wes has earned that. I think he's earned that ability to be like that, to have that kind of creative control and tell you that he has that creative control. I think if it was I don't know. I could see Jordan Peele trying to do something like this nowadays. I could see Jordan Peele trying to, like, his next horror movie being like this horror only exists because Jordan Peele says it exists. Like I could see that happening. Turn me off right away. But here, I don't know. It works for me, but I get the hot take.
That's a really good point, but I I'm gonna go more on the side of I don't think that, because if he was like the main character in the movie and it had, because he's in like two scenes, and granted
Yeah.
he is mentioned a little, it's not like every scene is like involved about Wes Craven. It's he has a couple scenes here and there, but so does Robert England, and
Yeah.
so does some of the other characters. And it's not like he's the focal point. So I don't think it was really that much of him like putting himself out there. I think he did a perfectly fine job of drawing a fine line between that.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much the opinion I'm of too. I think if anyone else had done it, it'd be pretentious. But here, um, because he's basically the godfather of meta, he pulls it off. So I'll give him that one. But I do understand the hot take. But I had to get that out of the way because that was burning in my mind. I was like, huh, how do I feel about this movie now? So, but no, I think Wes Craven has deserved the ability to channel demons.
You ever like watched a movie before and you love it, and then someone just points out like a giant like plot hole, and you're like, oh fuck.
Oh yeah. Oh dude.
You're like, I don't know about this movie anymore.
Yeah, that happened to me. That happened to me, dude, with Pacific Rim, man. I'll take a short break. When we went to see Pacific Rim in the theaters, there was a scene where the monster released an EMP and all the electricity went out and all the base lost power and all that. And they're like, "Oh, we got to get this robot out there. It doesn't run on electricity." Like, all right, let's get it out there. And they fly they fly the robot out there with a helicopter that runs on electricity. And I'm like, You know, I don't know. Yes, plot holes. Yeah, once you point that out, there's no closing that gap.
There's not. But so going on a little bit later on the film, Heather's on the way home. She gets home. Dylan's having another one of his freakouts. He's doing all this like never sleep again. And it's just like
Too soon after the dream child.
too soon after the dream child. I'd like to see Miko Hughes and that kid fight each other
Yeah, dude.
as their forms as children in the movies. I want to see who wins. That'd be great. And so she calls her husband Chase up. He's freaking out, or she's freaking out. She's like, "You need to come home. Your son's acting crazy. I don't know what to do with him." And so he's like 3 hours away working on a movie. And so he's driving on the way home. And dude, there's something about people in these movies when they drive at night and they fall asleep, it doesn't end well because they die. That's right.
Always.
Chase gets in a wreck. He dies. And Heather has a dream about it. She wakes up, and all of a sudden the cops are knocking on her door. And if the cops ever knocking on your door late at night and somebody's not home, you know what that knocks about.
Exactly. And she knows because her dreams have come true 4 times already. So um, I like the driving. I like the driving sequence. I especially like the glove through the seat, the glove between the legs. That callback and not doing it to Heather Langenkamp, which would have been a low hanging fruit. The iconic. I'm talking about the iconic glove coming through the legs. Would have been low hanging fruit if they did it to Heather Langenkamp again. Would have been a little tongue in cheek, but they did it to her husband instead. Maybe that's the demon toying with you. Maybe that's the demon toying with the audience. I'm glad it happened to her husband and not her.
I agree, 100%. So he dies, and the cops come and notify her. He's like, they're like, "Hey, we need you to come down at the morgue and identify the body." And I like this scene because she goes down there. And I mean, this is like right after he dies. She's like holding it together. She's like, "I'm here to see my dead husband's body." It's like, oh fuck. And she walks in, and the coroner or whatever, he pulls the sheet. He's only showing the head. She's like, "I want to see more." And he's looking at her like, what is wrong with you? What do you mean you want to see more? Like, you don't need to see anything else to identify this man. She's like, "I want to see more." He pulls it down a little bit. She's like, "I want to see the whole." He rips the sheet, and he's got this giant claw in the middle. And that's when you pretty much know
Yeah.
Freddy did this.
Yeah. And let's talk about the kills real quick. We talk about the kills in all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And starting right out the gate, they were very over the top. They're very cinematic. You know, you had a fountain of blood, you had a light up bed coffin, all the way through getting sliced up like a comic book page or becoming a road warrior demon. You know, like they've always been over the top. And when they weren't, I kind of criticized them for it. This movie has the most grounded and realistic kills of the entire franchise. Did you feel like that hurt it? Did you feel like they should be stepping up their game? Or did you feel like the simplicity made it hit harder?
Gotta be honest with you, I really don't. How many kills are there in this movie? Like three?
This same as all the other movies, just like 3 or 4.
I feel like there really isn't that many. There's nothing really memorable to me,
Right.
but I think that's okay though, because in this movie it is grounded in reality. It'd be different if you were in the dream world and there's all this crazy stuff happening. In this movie, I don't think it necessarily works against it. It doesn't work for it. It's fine. There's nothing that really gets me out of my seat about any of the kills, and we'll talk about one of them later, which is pretty much a recreation from
Mm-hmm.
the first one. But I mean, yeah, they probably could have upped it up and did some cool stuff. It's Freddy's return, new nightmare, but at the same time, it didn't really ruin the movie for me because I'm not in this movie for the kills per se. I'm in it for the story.
Yeah, and that's a nice detachment too, because the other movies you might not be in there for the story, you might be in there for the fun. So yeah, very grounded, very setting the stage for Scream and that level of grounded reality. Yeah, the kills on the surface seem very underwhelming, but
Yeah.
within the context of the story, I think they hit a little harder because they seem personal. They seem like murders,
Yeah.
rather than just like crazy deaths. So yeah, I get any criticisms about the kills because we're so used to so over the top and shape shifting Freddy and all that, but here it's basically just stab wounds. But it's real. It's a real movie, so take what you can get.
I like what you said there about being like personal and like
Mm-hmm.
murders. That does seem very real.
Mm-hmm.
So after Chase dies, they have the funeral, and honestly, up until this point, I mean, we might be 45 minutes, maybe an hour into the movie. I could be wrong, somewhere within that time span. And we have yet to see Freddy in this movie. He does not show up for
Right.
quite a while. And I noticed that when I rewatched, I was like, we have not seen Freddy yet. And I think that works out well for this movie because when we do see him, it's very quick. You don't see him for maybe a second. They had the funeral for Chase, and you know, all of a sudden there's an earthquake. Heather's dreaming again, and all of a sudden Dylan is like in the coffin with his dad, which is kind of like weird. And then all of a sudden you see Freddy for like a half a second. And he like grabs him and he like drags him down into the coffin, and Heather goes after him, and they're like in this underground like tunnel, like he's trying to drag him. It's kind of a cool scene. And then they wake up, and she hit her head on the coffin. That didn't really happen. And Dylan's fine, and she's comforted by John Saxon, which is her dad. Okay, I can see you're very excited. He's comforted by John Saxon, which is her dad in the movie. And go ahead, I'll let you take it from there.
John Saxon. What's up, John Saxon? The GOAT, the underrated GOAT. Could be the Loomis of this franchise, you know?
Definitely.
Oh, John Saxon, I'm so glad you came back. Thank you so much. And looking better than ever, dude. Godfather, man. I love it, man. It's something about John Saxon. I don't know what it is. He hasn't done anything crazy remarkable other than Nightmare on Elm Street, but just something about him, man. I want to have a beer with John Saxon, dude. I don't know. I'm glad he was here. Um, the jock kid from the first movie, I don't remember his Glenn, not Glenn, the other
Rod.
guy, Rod. Rod, that actor is back. He's in the crowd of the funeral. I
Yep.
was looking for Johnny Depp. But I guess he's too big for that movie right now. But it's all good.
What's funny is that I thought about that earlier. I said, oh well, he's dead, but I was like, wait, this is a meta movie. He's technically alive.
He's an actor, yeah.
He should be alive.
I
And
guess
where
he
is
I
he?
guess he realized he was in Freddy's dad, and he was like, "Oh shit, I'm not falling for that again."
He was like, oh my god, I'm never doing this again. So no, that is interesting how he's at it. But there are a couple little cameos from people in previous movies, which is cool to see as well. So um that happens. John Saxon's there, and then all of a sudden, her kid's just he's on his last leg, and he's just acting crazy. There's this one scene at night which I didn't care for the child acting in this film, but there's this one scene I really like where she goes downstairs, and I like the scenes where he's just like walking around at night, and it's just like pitch black.
Yeah.
He's sleepwalking, and he's just talking, and it's just like it's kind of disturbing. And then we have this one scene, and she keeps catching him watching the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Number one, the one that she's in, and it's kind of interesting because like, what if you were in a big horror movie, and all of a sudden like your little kid was watching it? Like, how would you feel about it? It's kind of an interesting way to think about stuff.
Yeah, kids can't differentiate movies from real life. I might have said it in my first review. I'm not going to show my kid Nightmare on Elm Street until she's at least 10. You know what I mean? So showing it to him when he's in that vulnerable state after such a traumatic event, I think the kid was like 4 or 5. Honestly, he was small. So seeing that, the demon put the TV on. Obviously, the
Right.
demon put the TV on to scare the kid, to channel that idea, to get the kid's mind on that. Yeah, man, that's a scary thing for a kid to endure, and it's good enough. It's probable cause for as to the reason of his behavior, as to the reason for his behavior is because he's watching these scary movies late at night when he's having these episodes. So that's why the doctor character later in the movie was like, "You let him watch your horror movies?" Like, yeah, well, that explains it. But Heather Langenkamp knows the truth. But everything's explained away because it's a very, very real and grounded movie.
Absolutely. So she goes through that, and she's trying to figure out what's going on with the kid. And then we kind of jump to the scene where she finally goes and visits Wes Craven. And it's like we kind of already touched on it earlier, but he's the one that is having these dreams. He's writing this script for this new movie, and that's when he kind of explains the lore that he's having these dreams. It's not actually Freddy, it's a demon that's coming out into the real world. She needs to play Nancy one more time. First time I've said Nancy in this whole review, to take Freddy down. And so it's kind of it's a little all over the place. You might not catch it the first time you see it because it's a lot to kind of maybe take in. But that's when he kind of explains what's going on. Like what's happening in the movies is kind of happening in real life. And they need to make another movie to take him out, essentially.
Yeah. And as you said that, it just clicked in my head. If you die in your dream, you die for real. If you die in the movie, you die for real. So yeah, it's taking it out of the dreamland and putting it into the movie land. And I think there's a parallel there too with movies being like dreams to children. That's why he's watching the movie when he's sleepwalking. I think there is a little footnote there about the parallel between dreams and films that Wes Craven was trying to make. In case you can't tell, I love movies that just give me a lot to just chew on and spit it out, make it sound like I'm smart when I'm really not. Like I love getting stuff that I could just like regurgitate and like think about, you know. So this is another one that does it, man. For Wes Craven, if you die in, if you die in the movie, you die for real.
Poop in your dreams, you poop for real.
You poop in the movie, you poop for real.
That's right. So she goes through that. She explains what's going on, and then she has this other conversation with Robert Englund. She calls him up. She's like, I need to talk with you. I need to meet. And he's like, what's going on? And he's also having the nightmares, but at the same time, he's acting very mysterious. And we see that he's at his home and he's painting the new version of Freddy kind of on his on this canvas. And that's the last we see of Robert Englund in this movie, unfortunately. So we kind of, is it up to interpretation? Does he know something? Does he maybe feel guilty? Does he is he just a guy that's having dreams about the movie that he made? And it's like, wow, this is crazy. I don't know. It's kind of a weird one.
Yeah, it's definitely a loose end. Um, I wonder if there was a version of this movie script where Robert Englund, because he was seeing Freddy in his dreams too, Freddy the demon came and killed Robert Englund, the character. I wonder if there was a version of that where that had happened and we had that face off like you were talking about. And maybe New Line cut it because seeing Robert Englund go toe to toe with a stunt double against Freddy Krueger just didn't sit right. Maybe that's an explanation I would believe. But yeah, there's a gaping hole about what happened with Robert Englund, especially after that painting where he's like acting kind of sinister, but not, but then he never shows up again. I wonder if he had a kill. I wonder if he had a death scene and we just didn't get to see it. I'm I bet that there was, at least in the first draft of the script. But yeah, I'm sad it got left open, but you can it's open to interpretation. Maybe the demon's Robert Englund, maybe not. Maybe Robert Englund's just another victim. I don't know, but the painting, a little too much of a loose end for me. I like open to interpretation endings with story threads, but that one didn't sit well with me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you might be right. I wonder if they had another plan for Robert Englund, or maybe they didn't have a plan. But like I said in the beginning, I wish he would have had some sort of conclusion. Either he gets killed or he helps kill Freddy. I don't know, something. I think that would have been an extra thing to add to the film. But as we go on, Dylan's having another episode. They take him to the hospital, but this time it's Heather, Dylan, and her babysitter that's been there, Julie. And she's in the film a little bit here and there. And man, this doctor character, psychiatrist doc, God, she is so good at me hating her.
Yeah, dude.
And I know that's her job. And she does a great job with it. The doctor, I think it's Dr. Hepner. I could be wrong, but she does a great job in this movie of just being a stern, mean doctor that just thinks the mom is doing all the wrong. This kid's being, not having a good home life, and she just kind of lays it all on her. It's like, damn.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that she is this movie's version of the parents from the original that didn't believe the kids. I
Hmm.
think that because nobody really believes Heather Langenkamp that they're going through this. Not even John Saxon, not her co-stars or her babysitter or whatever. No one really believes them. And the doctor really is like spearheads that movement of not believing her. It's psychosis. You're staying up late, et cetera, et cetera. So I
All
think that
you
was
got to do is just get some sleep,
you
okay?
just gotta get some good old shut eye. But yeah, I think she was this meta version of the parent characters who didn't believe.
Yeah, that's a very good possibility. So the doctor is, she's stern, and we had this scene earlier where Heather Langenkamp and John Sachs are having this conversation. She's like, "I'm not crazy, am I?" He's like, "No, you're going through a lot. The kid's going through a lot. Like, this is normal. You just need to take him and get some help, and he'll be all right." And then that's when Dylan's like on top of like the rocket ship thing, and he's doing like the he
Yeah,
jumps off.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And he was like, "What did he say when he was up there?" He was like, do you think God will take me or something like
yeah,
that?" Yeah, pretty cool. Not really a developed idea, but okay, cool. I'll take it.
correct. Yeah, he says some interesting, and that line did kind of stick. He was like, "I tried to go to God, but he wouldn't take me." I was like, "Oh, damn!" Like, I don't know many like 5 or 6 year olds that are like saying stuff like that.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? That might be another thing that you get to just chew on and think about. Maybe that was a callback to Freddy's first line ever saying, "This is God. This is your God."
It could be
So maybe he was telling the kid that. You never know.
very true, very true. So they're at the hospital, and there's all this stuff going on, and Nancy, she had a dream earlier with Freddy, and she's got this huge gash on her arm with more like razor marks, and it kind of looks like that she maybe had did it to herself, and the doctor is really concerned about her and the kid, more concerned about the kid. Then she starts questioning Heather Langenkamp about, oh, I know you. You're Nancy from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Has your son seen your movies? Which is just an odd question to ask.
Yeah,
Um, it's like he's got a sore throat, fever, and oh yeah, has he seen any of your movies?
because if he has, he's got demons now.
Because yep, that's it. That's it. Let me tell you, I've seen The Exorcist. I know what happens.
Exactly.
So but we get this conflict between the doctor and the nurses, and they take Dylan to go somewhere else to go in a separate room, and the babysitter goes with them, and Dylan really wants Rex, the little stuffed dinosaur we mentioned earlier. So she's trying to go home and get Rex and come back. And in the meantime, they give Dylan like a sleeping pill or like a shot. Excuse me, it's a shot. They kind of distract him and they stick him in the arm. And Heather specifically told Julie, she's like, "Don't let the doctors give him a shot because it's going to put him to sleep. And we know if you go to sleep, you're going to die, or you're probably going to die."
Yeah. Exactly. Heather was right again, but no one wants to listen.
See, even in real life, nobody listens to this woman. I don't understand. Just don't get it. Don't get it. So, and then this is when we get a death scene that is a copy of the first, but I think it's done in a way that's tasteful and it pays respect. It's not like, oh, they're just trying to copy the first movie, blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
we get the scene of Freddy, coming out, and we finally see him like in full for the first time in a while, and they do the thing where he grabs Julie and he walks her up like upside down, and there's blood kind of on the walls and on the ceiling, and he's and Dylan's watching it like right in front of him. I mean, it's kind of a cool kill. Yes, it's a throwback to the first film, but I think it's done in a fun way.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an homage, obviously, to the highlight kill here that started it all. But take it a step further than that. Think about the fact that this is a meta movie, and the demon within this screen is very alive and very aware of his movie origins. You could also make the argument that this is just another one of those personal attacks at Heather Langenkamp by the demon, where he was like, "Ha ha! Remember when we
Mm-hmm.
did this in the movie?
Yeah.
Watch me do it to your real friend," and did that. So Yeah, super dope. If ever there was a time to do that homage, I'm glad it wasn't in the last 5 movies. I'm glad it's in this one, where you could argue that the demon is making the conscious effort to do the callback in real life to get under Heather Langenkamp's skin. So yeah, that adds. I think if they had done that ceiling kill in any other sequel, it wouldn't have landed. But because you have that added layer of personal attack to it,
Yep.
slaps.
I agree. I think it's a fun kill. It's creative. It pays respect perfectly. And so when that's happening, they're in the other room with the doctor and Heather, and she's like, I need you to tell me this. And she's basically accusing her and telling her, hey, we're gonna take your child away. And she's like, what the hell no? She's getting all pissed. And then the nurse is like, you need to come see this. They walk in, and then she's been killed. They see all this blood, and then Dylan escapes, and they have to go chasing after him. And I got to be honest with you. This definitely is my least favorite scene in the movie. The highway scene where they're running across the highway and they're dodging the cars and they're doing the spec and he's lifting them up by the glove and Freddy's in the clouds. And I don't hate the scene. I just hate because it's just dated as hell.
Yeah, it's dated and it has a place. It has a place in the other ones and the other sequels that were campy and corny. You could make the argument that Wes Craven was doing a callback to the puppet kill from number 3. You could make that argument. I'm singing this movie's high praises. I don't even make that argument. I just think that it was kind of just kooky fun. For those of you that like the kooky sequels, here's a little something for you. I think that's what it was. It didn't land well with me, mostly because of the effects and the green screen effects, but
Correct.
I could go with that.
Yeah. So that's probably my least favorite. And throughout the film, when they're in the hospital, she's like, "Home's just right across the road there," and they kept foreshadowing that he's going to run home. So he does. And Heather finally makes it through all that after she gets smacked by like 2 cars. She gets up, runs off, and this is kind of where we get to the end of the film. In the beginning, I felt like I was Dylan in this movie because his mom's reading him bedtime stories and she wants him to read like the really like messed up parts. She's like, why? And I feel like that's me. I'm like, because I like horror.
I want to
Okay, just
hear
read
it.
it. I want to hear it. I want to hear. I don't want to hear no stupid bedtime story. I want to hear something messed up.
Exactly.
So, and something about Hansel and Gretel and how do they find their way home? The breadcrumbs. Well, Dylan had been saving his sleeping pills they were giving him at the hospital. In this movie, he gets abducted by Freddy, the demon, at the end, and he left the breadcrumbs of the pills for Heather to find. And she takes the sleeping pills as breadcrumbs and eventually falls asleep. And this is when we get to the final battle of the film. We get Demon Freddy, we get first Heather, and the winner gets Dylan, pretty much. And they're in like this like I guess what was supposed to be the set of the new movie, but it's like this like ancient like temple and it's like hell and fire and it's all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, but before we get there, you skipped an important scene. I want to talk about the breadcrumbs first. I don't think that kid is old enough to know about how to leave breadcrumbs and that his mom would pick up on it. I didn't really believe that. Again, you can make the argument that Wes Craven was writing the script that Dylan did that, and so therefore Dylan did it. But does that mean that every decision of Dylan's is Wes Craven? So I
right.
don't really like that breadcrumb idea. But the important scene is John Saxon comes by. He comes by to talk to her, and he, in between cuts of the camera, he reverts back to his costume and his hairstyle and his appearance in Nightmare on Elm Street 1, where he's like, "Why do you keep calling me John?" Because he has become Nancy's father again,
Right.
like in real life. And Heather's like, "No, no," she knows what's going on, and she remembers Wes Craven's words about you have to become Nancy again to finally close the book on this. And finally, she just gives up. She's like, "I love you, Dad," to John Saxon, who's clearly not her dad, but she's playing the role of Nancy. Her clothes become the pajamas from Nightmare on Elm Street 1. Freddy pops out of the bed. The threshold is broken. The score drops. Banger of a scene. I love that. Even the concept is a little outlandish. I love it. And she finally embraces the fact that she has to play this role in this movie in order to get out of this. Beautiful. I like that. But yes, they get through the blanket to this dungeon-esque area dreamscape of with like like Roman pillars and like a pantheon and stuff like that. Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe it was like an abandoned idea, or maybe Wes Craven was talking about how centuries ago they had a different word for this demon. So maybe he's been around since Roman Colosseum days. I think that that's the explanation that I went with, is that it's a demon who's been here for centuries. So that's his playground. Yeah, not a lot of stock was put into it, but it's cool set design. You know, every one of these movies has cool set design somewhere at some point or another. But yeah, we get that final showdown in this hellish boiler room.
So you're right, and I'm glad that you mentioned that scene that you just brought up, because this whole franchise, I have criticized every movie, maybe except the first because it was the first, for showing that damn house. But it works in this movie because they're reverting back to the dream, to the actual movie, and she turns around and it becomes the house, her house becomes the old house. And it,
Yes,
it works. Okay. That's when it
yes,
works.
yes. I saw that. I saw that, and I go, there it is. There it is. You finally did the house. You did the house, and it actually made sense this time. Thank you.
Exactly. So props to you, Wes Craven. You heard my cries 20, 30 years later and said, we got to fix this for this guy. So we get that, and then we get into the final boss fight. And as big and bad as Freddy is in this movie, he really doesn't. I don't know if it's they were going for more of a grounded type of like what an actual person would do, but like he doesn't really do anything too. He kind of gets taken out pretty good by Nancy and Dylan. He doesn't really get any good punches in. It doesn't do anything too crazy. It's very grounded, and they're kind of going at each other. And we get this scene where there's like this fire pit or whatever in the background. Heather gets knocked out. She's kind of passed out, and Dylan he crawls in there to try to avoid Freddy. And for me, what might be one of the funniest scenes in the movie is Freddy opens his mouth and his tongue just like he just stretches all the way out. He's like, ah.
Yeah, that's the only time he really changes form like that. But oh, and him opening the mouth like the boa constrictor mouth to eat the kid. That tripped me up when I was a kid. I remember seeing this movie. I remember seeing that scene when I was a kid. And I was like, it kind of caught me off guard. I like that.
I did like that too. It reminded me of the thing from Smile,
Yep.
where
Yep.
it like opens the mouth and like it's like, oh. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool. And then he gets wrapped around with his tongue. I don't know, it's interesting. And
Yeah.
then Heather gets up and she goes and stabs Freddy from behind, and Dylan escapes. And they throw Freddy into this through the fire pit, and they kind of just shut the doors on him, kind of like they did at the end of the Hansel and Gretel book that they read in the beginning. And we get this scene where Freddy, he's obviously a demon. He kind of burns, and the demon pops out of him, and it, the nightmare is pretty much over. And Freddy burns and dies. Anything you want to say about that last scene, or
Yeah, the Hansel and Gretel thing wasn't really big to me, but I could tell that maybe Wes Craven in his first idea for a comeback of Freddy was to make a Hansel and Gretel type story. And that was him kind of doing that allegory with the Hansel and Gretel type ending in the storybook. So didn't really play a big role for me at least, but yeah, I get it. I get the Hansel and Gretel, the storybook, the demon is contained by the limits of storytelling. Hey, I get it, man. I get it. So
gets
yeah,
it?
props to you.
So that's what happens at the ending of the film. The whole setting is like blowing up into pieces, so they run and they jump in this like waterfall or whatever, and then they come out the other end back at the house from Dylan's bed, and they're sitting there on the ground. They survived the nightmare. They've won. They beat Freddy, and they look on the ground. There's a script, and it's the script for Wes Craven's new Nightmare, and it's pretty much the entire film written from what we just said as far as the script, and then they start reading it, which is kind of funny because she's like reading. What if she read the whole thing to him? It's like, hey, remember when your dad died? And like, I'm reading it.
It's like, this is the part where your dad dies. Cover your ears.
It's like, hey, just you might want to cover your ears. And it just kind of fades out from there. And that's Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
And it ends with the absence of a Freddy tease, which I appreciate so much. There is no drop top. There is no reflection in the pool. There is no light turning on in the model house. Freddy's gone.
That's very true. And we wouldn't see Freddy again until about 10 more years later with Freddy versus Jason. So that was Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I know you are obviously a big fan of this movie, so I'll go ahead and get my stuff out of the way first. I'm gonna let
but first, did you were 50-50 at the beginning of this? Do you feel like the needle has swayed one way or another?
I do. I feel like it's swayed more on the I enjoyed it side. There are some things that I have some gripes with the movie, things I didn't like, but for the most part, I'm not really judging it as a Nightmare on Elm Street movie like the sequels. I'm just kind of judging it as its own thing, and I think it's it's a really cool concept for its time, especially, and I think they did a pretty solid job with it. So for me, it's more of on the good side than the bad.
Good. Good. What grade would you give it though?
After thinking about it, you might get mad at me, but I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna give it a B minus.
Okay, better than I expected. I expected the
I'm
C
gonna
plus.
give it a B minus. I was in between a C plus and a B minus. I was right in between that. I do like the story. I like Heather in this movie. I like the concept that they went for. I think it might not work for everybody, but I think if you give it a chance and you just kind of take it for what it is, you know, you can get sucked into it, and it's a cool story. Um, you know, I think Freddy's good in this movie. Not the best, not the worst. He's solid for me. I maybe would have liked to see just maybe some more creative kills, maybe a little bit more of Freddy, but he's very reverted back to the first movie where he's sinister and dark. I mean, this is a dark Freddy. He says like one like maybe kind of joke in this movie, maybe. Um, and I just think it's a cool concept, and for its time it was really something that was different, and I don't know how people perceived it back when it came out in theaters, but all these years later, for the most part, people seem to enjoy it. So for me, I'm going to give it a B minus. Not my favorite, but definitely not the worst, but I enjoyed it.
Good. Um, man, where to begin? I think I'd be prepared with this. All right, do my thing. 4 golden rules. Golden rule number 1: don't show me the monster. You didn't show me the monster enough. We get a couple good looks at Freddy, a couple well lit looks at Freddy, like in a hospital room and outside in the funeral, but they don't last long. They don't last long enough. They cut away very quickly. And because Freddy has had such a revamped appearance in this movie with the bone hand, with the torn flesh versus the burns, his appearance is different. This is the one time I'm trying to get a better look at him. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
no, you didn't show me the monster in this. You get that for sure. Be scary at all times, not just when the threat is on screen. Yeah, the Freddy's always there. The claws, from the claws in the wall with the earthquake, all the way to the the numerous other things, like with John Saxon becoming the dad again. He's always there. So yeah, you get this one. He's in the real world. You feel it. You feel his presence. You don't have to be asleep to see him. Yes, I absolutely. Don't rely overly on jump scares. you you had a couple jump scares, but the scares that you had other than the jump scares, I don't think were scary. It was more of a murder mystery than a horror slasher to me.
I
Um,
agree. I agree with that 100%.
yeah, it didn't. Nightmare on Elm Street one fucked me up. This one was awesome in a very meta way, but I can't say that I was scared of this one. Also, because if you ain't the main character, you got nothing to worry about, right? So this demon's not going after anyone but Heather Langenkamp and those directly connected to her. So no, I can't say you were scary other than jump scares. So I love you, but I can't give you that one. Final golden rule: push the boundaries. Hey, I've seen a lot of horror movies. I've seen a lot of horror sequels. I've seen a lot of other genre sequels. I don't think I've ever seen a sequel as creatively revolutionizing as this one. This one, oh my God. Once you realize you can do this with a sequel to a movie, all the other sequels seem dumb as hell. So this was super cool. I want to see other franchises do something like this. I want to see a meta Michael Myers. I want to see maybe a meta Iron Man. You know what I mean? I want to see a real world. I want to see a movie character so big and beloved come out of the pages and feel like it's in the real world with us. So yeah, man, this pushed the boundaries like no other movie in this franchise. So yeah, absolutely. If I could give you 2 points for this one, I would. So you get 3 out of 4. You're in the B range. Slam dunk, no doubt, B plus. That's the highest I can give you. Staying true to my golden rules. I love this movie so much. It's so good. This is the Halloween 2018 to me. This is it for sure, and I think I actually gave that a B plus too. This is, oh my God, movie slaps. I absolutely love this movie. I am so in love with the concept of this movie. The dude, it's kind of like the Breaking Bad of sequels. You know, after that, nothing else really seems the same quality. So,
Nope.
Yeah, man, I'm in love with the concept of this because I love chewing on that shit. You know, I love that brain food. So, yeah, man, slam dunk, B plus for sure. Um, is it the best Freddy Krueger movie? We'll talk about that when we rank them. But I can tell you without a doubt, it's my favorite.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad that we got to this review. I knew it was going to be fun. And I think we both enjoyed it for the most part. So I'm glad that you did not go complete psycho and pick the 2010 remake as your favorite. But hey, we still have got time.
We got time. We got time. And that is next. Technically, next is Freddy versus Jason, but we're not going to do that this time. We're going to wait till we do Friday the 13th so we can appreciate it from more than just a one-sided argument. I will tell you before, though, I don't know if you saw it, but around this time, the movie called Jason Goes to Hell was coming out. You've seen this one?
Yes.
You remember the ending?
I do.
One of my favorite horror movie ending teases of all time. For those who don't know, spoiler alert for Jason Goes to Hell, close your ears. It ends with Jason's mask in the sand blows off of it, and out of the sand pops this knifed glove and pulls it down while you hear the sinister laugh, teasing Freddy versus Jason. I didn't care about that movie when my roommate was watching it, but when I saw that ending, I said, oh, dude, I just got hyped for a movie that came out 20 years ago. Oh my God, that was so cool. So one of my favorite teases. But yes, that came after this. Freddy versus Jason, we're not going to talk about right now. We're going to go to the 2010 remake, reboot of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Correct.
What can we expect?
As much crap as I give this movie, I've never seen it, so I have no idea what to expect.
You've never seen 2010?
No.
Holy shit. Oh, okay. Wow.
I have never seen it, and I don't think I've heard a good thing about it, so I've avoided it like the plague. But I'm going to have to watch it for the sake of this review. But I am willing to give this movie a fair chance. I'm going to keep an open mind. I've heard there are some good elements to it that people like, that they wish they would have fleshed out a little bit more. But I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to go into it. And hey, I mean, listen, people were saying Freddy's Dead was probably the worst movie they've ever seen. I didn't think... I personally didn't think that at all. Granted, it's not a good movie, but I didn't think it was the worst thing I've ever seen.
No.
So, hey, you never know. I could end up liking this movie. I could think it's all right. I could think it's the best. Who knows?
And coming off the franchise, coming hot off watching the whole franchise, you might see it in a different angle as opposed to those who were just going to the theater in 2010 to see it. So maybe you can have some new appreciation and pick up on some callbacks that maybe some other people missed.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for watching Every Horror Film Where Horror Is Forever. If you haven't checked out our previous reviews of A Nightmare on Elm Street, what are you doing? Go check them out so you can follow up with the rest of the timeline. Hope you guys are having a great October, and we'll see you on the next one.
The mummy has now been located.
The living mummy. The living mummy.
Bullets won't stop.
Some creature out of time.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
He's completely out of control.
I saw those bodies.
Is he a man or a monster?
You actually knew a werewolf in a peaceful town where nothing ever happened.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
In the mystical regions of Transylvania.